of being aggressive and looking for that shot first, but also playing to their strengths and understanding what they do well. So maybe shooting is not a strength of yours. Well, if that's the case, that's okay. Can you become an elite shot fake and drive, or a shot fake and pass player? Because when you start to play at this pace, the defense at times will be scrambling. They might have time to think about, what the scout is and who I'm closing out. So if you can get really good at, a shot fake, that's going to create opportunities for your team. What types of shots are we looking for? So I've got 3 things there. And the first thing is we want to hit back as quickly as we possibly can. So what I mean by that, when you think about it, it's human nature to have gaps in your game. And these gaps are only very small, but most teams, when they take a shot, there's just that fraction of a second between them shooting the ball and getting, their D-trans going and getting ready to actually play defense. And then on the flip side, a lot of teams, the other team scores, there's just that little, fraction of a second where you maybe drop your head or you're just a little bit slow to get the ball out of bounds. So with this particular, let's call it system, we want to really encourage our team to hit back as quickly as we can. So if the other team scores, that's fine. Get the ball out of bounds, get it back in, and let's go. Now, for the actual shots that we're looking for, particularly in the first 8 seconds, nothing really innovative. We're looking for layups and we're looking for kickouts. So with kickouts, we say you must get a piece of the paint first, and I'll show some examples of that in a little bit. Some exceptions to the rules with our shot selection. For elite shooters, and I mean, these are, maybe only 1 or 2 players per team, we're okay with kick ahead freeze as long as that's a strength of yours and it's an open look. And then another exception would be 2-for-1 opportunities. So maybe, it's late in the quarter. If it fits within our 2-for-1 framework, then maybe there's a shot here or there that we can kind of live with, knowing that, in those 2-for-1 situations, the percentages will work out in our favor more times than not. Something I got from Mike Kelly at the Taipans when I was watching them train back in December. And if you watch the Taipans play this past season, they were obviously one of the best transition teams in the league. And something he spoke about is, there's definitely times when you're playing this particular way that you can end up just shooting a lot of frees. You can get a little bit of, piece of the paint, kicking it out. And there might be phases in the game where you find yourself taking, 4 or 5 frees in a row in consecutive possessions. And something that he had was when, as coaches or as players, when you felt that, they had a particular play that they would run and they had a particular name for it. And they knew when they were running that play, they had to get 2 feet in the paint. And the first thing they were really searching for a layup that very next possession. So what we did with the Tassie women, we had a code word, and our code word was just black, the color. And the reason behind that was the color of our polo shirts as coaches. So if we felt like, maybe we haven't got penetration or we haven't had a post touch in a while, then, we just start yelling out black and tugging on our shirt. And we know that next possession, like, we have to get that. And if you can't get that done, then you're probably going to be joining me on the bench. To start off with, like I said, I'll talk a little bit about the half court, and you'll see over the course of this presentation how it all kind of ties in together. So in the half court, to start off with, without the basketball, when there's a drive, we want to be getting to our receiver spots. And again, these are not overly innovative, but as you can see in that first diagram there, when 1 is driving, we have 3 and 4 getting to the drift and diag, and we have 2 pulling behind the basketball, dragging behind. With our 4 spots, as you can see in that second diagram there, we want to really emphasize and really err on the side of playing wide and playing as wide as you possibly can. And that's going to create opportunities to penetrate through the free throw line. And at the end of the day, it's creating space in the keyway for us to be able to attack. As you can see, there's only 4 players in those diagrams. If we had a 5th player, we would have them, depending on if it was early in our offensive possession, we would have that 5th player. If they were trailing the play, just dragging kind of to the top of the 3-point line. If it was maybe later in the possession, we've had some action, or let's say they've done a good job of rim running, then we would have them getting to the dunker spot on penetration. And for me, I like my dunker getting really deep behind the backboard towards the baseline, and they're looking to circle around the hoop and just find little pockets for, you know, lob passes or pocket passes where they can just step in and finish. And as far as with the basketball in the half court, we want to really emphasize making quick decisions. So on every catch, like I said before, the first thing we're always looking for is our shot, or being super aggressive with that. If we don't have our shot, then, well, what's next? Is it pass? Is it drive? And we want the athletes to be playing off a 2 count. So by that, I mean when they get possession of the ball, it is 1 and 2. And by the time they get to 2, they need to be doing something. They need to be shooting it, passing it, driving it. I think a big part of, you know, any offense that you run is you need to be able to make a play one-on-one, and you need to be able to create a split and get past your defender. So some keys to when you are attacking with the basketball is we want you to attack the kill box. So you can see in that first diagram there, we have one who, when he's driving, or he or she's driving, they're trying to get to the kill box. When you get inside the keyway, we want our athletes to play off 2 feet. Reason being, it gives us more time to make decisions. Plus, you're probably going to have better balance. You're going to maybe be a little bit stronger if you have a defender kind of on your back or hips. So we want to play off 2 feet. And then as you can see by that second diagram there, when we do kick it out, so if we don't have a layup and we kick it out, we then want to turn and sprint. And if you watch, you know, any elite players, when they penetrate, let's say it's off pick and roll. So they penetrate, they attack the kill box, they play off 2 feet, they then kick it out, and the best players, they will turn and sprint. Whereas sometimes you might watch junior athletes will get in there, do a good job, they might kick it out, and then they might stand. And we want to understand that when we get into space, we then quickly get out of space. Something that I like to do, and this is a particular drill that I got from Ross McMahon's, can't pronounce his name right, apologies Ross, is the Dominoes Drill. And so how the drill works, and I'll show you in the next clip, in the next slide with some clips. It starts off with the offense being on the seams and corners. You have all 4 defenders in the keyway. The scoring for it works like this. So you get, when you're on offense, you get 3 points for a layup, and you get 3 points for a free. You get 1 point for a mid-range shot. Now, by giving it 1, we still value a mid-range shot. We just don't value it as high as what we do a layup or a free. Now, times where a mid-range shot would be okay for us would be, you know, if it's starting to get late clock and it's kind of like, you know, 6, 5, 4, and you just got to make something happen. We might be okay with you attacking and then maybe, you know, stepping back and taking a mid-range shot. So it's not a bad shot. We just don't value it as high as a layup or a free. And then you get 2 points. So, and I'll show you how it starts off. The coach will have a basketball in the keyway. They will kick it out. And on that initial pass out from the coach, the offensive player, if they catch it and they can get a shot off, and it's a clean shot, and all it has to do is hit the ring, you automatically get 2 points for your team. So it's really encouraging them to look for that shot first. But what it also does is it forces the defense to go and close out really hard. And we want to almost tell the defense on that initial kick out pass from the coach that, like, imagine that Steph Curry. Like, we are not letting them get a free off. So we're running them off the line, making them penetrate, and that's when the dominoes start to fall, and that's how the drill gets going. So here's a few clips on Dominoes Drill. So as you can see, we have the 4 offensive players set up, like I mentioned, so on the seams and corners. We have 4 defenders in the keyway, coach with the basketball. Like I said, on that initial pass out from the coach, if you can get a clean shot off, and all it has to do is hit the ring. So basically, don't get blocked, don't airball it. If you get it on the ring, you get 2 points for that. So again, really encouraging the athletes to look for that shot first. Then what you start to get is the defense will go and close out really hard, and they'll do a good job, you know, high hand close out. And then, like I said, the dominoes will start to fall. and it gives us an opportunity to penetrate. So we have the player with the basketball attacking the kill box. We have someone in the corner who's in drift. We have someone on the diag, and we have a player who's starting to drag behind the ball. As you can see by this next possession, same thing. So penetration. Now I would classify this as getting a piece of paint. We've attacked the nail. We've really drawn and engaged that help defender. Now what we have, so driver, we have drift, diag, and we have a player dragging behind the basketball. Now this is where I said before, we want to really err on the side of playing really wide. And this offensive player here has done a really good job of spacing towards the diag, creating a longer closeout, right? Kick out free. But to give context, that's one of our better shooters, so that's a really good shot for us. Last clip here. So we have offensive player attacking the kill box, playing off 2 feet. And this is where I said you're kicking it out. You are then turning and sprinting to create space. Now, on your initial kick-out pass are just some basic receiver principles. So when there's 2 players on the same side, so when we have our drift and diag, on that initial kick-out, we don't want to be necessarily driving it back in there because for the most part, there's unlikely to be much space in there to drive. So we're looking for our shot first. If that's not there, then we're looking to throw one more. After we've had that, again, looking for your shot first, it's okay to penetrate from that particular situation. Now, we'll start to talk about playing in the full court. So again, without the basketball, our key concepts are here. So the first thing, as soon as we get possession of the basketball, like it's a no-brainer if you want to play fast, is as soon as we get ball, sprint. And with that, we explain to the athletes that you want to be like Usain Bolt. Running as fast as you possibly can. Now with that, we want you to be getting to the sideline as quick as you possibly can, and then heading down towards the wing. So once you get to the wing, you're starting, or just a little bit before the wing, starting to look for kick ahead passes. So you're looking over your shoulder. If that's not there, then if there's no one ahead of you, get into the corner. If there's someone ahead of you, then you'll hold your spacing on the wing. Our 5 would be an exception to that above rule. So we don't necessarily want our 5 getting to the sideline, but we'll discuss the 5. And that's kind of, I guess, the last piece of the puzzle. We'll talk about the 5 in a little bit. So here's some examples of sprinting. And this is something as well that's really important to note when you see this, and these are obviously really good examples of it. It's not like you're going to play fast and you're going to end up getting, layups in transition every single possession of the game. But in order to give yourself a chance to have just a few breakthroughs every quarter, you need to be relentless in your approach. So a lot of what we do, we emphasize it a lot, and we spoke about it a lot at practice. And all that really resulted in was when we went away to nationals, we maybe got ourselves 4 to 8 points each quarter in transition. Something I like saying at all clinics is, you get what you emphasize as a coach. So if you want to be a great team with pace, then you need to talk about it all the time, and you need to really emphasize it. And when ways to emphasize it, you can obviously, record it. So you might have one of your assistant coaches, who during a game records sprints, and they just keep an eye on, all right, as soon as we get possession of the ball, who's sprinting? Maybe you do that at the end of the game when you watch film back. Maybe you tally up and you might have a target for a team of how many sprints per game you want to get. Or you might have like an individual leaderboard for the players, and they might start to get competitive with that. So that's one way you can really emphasize it. Another way is watch film. Film your games or your practice sessions, watch it and show examples of the athletes. And it's pretty funny when you watch the film back, there's some examples where they might look at it and they might go, during the game, they might feel like they're running hard, but then you show them the film and they go, actually, no, I can run harder. So getting them to understand what sprinting is. So Some examples here, keep an eye on this particular player and this particular player here. So we get the defensive stop. As soon as we get possession, there's, within half a second, getting out, running the lanes hard. Right? And again, just by being relentless with that, it just gives us an opportunity to get an easy 2 points. Another example here, same athletes involved. So these two athletes here. Again, we get possession of the ball. They can sense we're about to get possession of the ball and just running hard. And I always like stopping it here because it's pretty cool because we have, four athletes from our team in the front court. We have, 1.5 players from the other team. So it's a pretty cool clip. Next part of it is talking about in the full court. So the person with the basketball and what they're doing. Similar to the half court, when we get possession of the ball, we want to make quick decisions. So part of that is we also want to be lag free. So I think the saying's pretty self-explanatory, but when we catch the ball, we don't want to have these kind of little moments where we just freeze and we're just a little bit hesitant and a little bit not sure. So we want to play to our instincts. So what that might be when we get possession of the ball, let's say it's a rebound. If it's a strength of yours, you might rebound the ball, you might pivot, peek, look up before, and then bust out and just put the ball on the floor and go. If that's not a strength of yours, then you might get the rebound, you might pivot, peek, outlet pass, and then we're off to the races. We want to play lag free. We want to play to our instincts. When you do have the ball in the full court, we want you to have your head on the rim. So what I mean by that, you have possession of the ball. You don't want to be making it clear and you don't want to be showing the defense what you plan on doing next. So let's say you want to throw a kick ahead pass. You shouldn't be staring at who you're going to pass the ball to. What we want is your head on the rim, and then part of that, your head might have like a little bit of a swivel where you're kind of looking around, and then using that and your peripheral vision, all right, you notice someone's ahead of you, then you're kicking it ahead. So you're not staring, you're not showing the defense what you're going to do. Like I said, what are you going to look to do? First thing is always is to kick the ball ahead, and as we know, that's the fastest way to get the ball down the court. If you kick it ahead to that player who's towards the wing area, if they catch it and they can make a play straight away, then you will just drag behind them. If you kick it ahead and they don't have an opportunity to drive, then you'll do what we call an X-cut, and I'll show you some film of that in a second. Let's say you've got the ball, your head's in the rim, there's no kick aheads. The next thing you're looking to do is just attack the rim. Can you go make a play one-on-one? Can you beat your player, get on the rim, go get a layup? If you don't have either of those things, so you can't get a kick ahead pass, you can't attack the rim yourself, then you'll get into what we call a zoom. And again, I'll show you some clips of that. So some examples. So we've got kick ahead pass. Our spacing's pretty good. We already have a player down here in the ball side corner. We have a player on the weak side who's really wide out towards the sideline. We catch the ball. First thing is to look for your shot. Can you go score yourself? Heads in the rim. Okay, go make a play. Now that was a terrible M1 call, but we'll take it. Very similar here. So play of the basketball. Okay, again, we have pretty good space and we're playing really wide. Our 5, who I'll talk about in a sec, is just trailing behind, getting towards the top. We've caught the ball and we've noticed there's a mismatch. So we have the center of the other team matched up on one of our guards. So heads on the rim. First thing we can do is like, can I go make a play? Now this isn't necessarily the greatest example, but this is what we call a zoom. So play off the basketball. First thing should be, head on the rim. Can you kick it ahead? Next thing is head on the rim. Can I go make a play myself? If that's not there, then what we'll have them do is start to drive, and then kind of last second when you know you don't have a lane to attack, you'll get into what we call a zoom, which is this play here will pull up behind. And it's just kind of a quick little dribble handoff, almost like a dribble pitch. So we call that a zoom because it's meant to be fast. Right, I'll talk about our 5 in a second. This is our 5 here. Right, this player, we would Obviously, we'd love to see that player nice and wide, getting out of the middle of the 4 because they're not the 5. And then we would have our 5 into a drag screen. But again, we'll talk about that in a second. Okay, we have penetration, defense collapses. One of our better shooters wide open 3. That's a pretty good shot. Here's again, not the greatest example, but this is what we call an X cut. So let's imagine this is in transition. Let's say this is a kick head pass to the wing. And let's imagine this defender's engaged, so they're on the ball, they're arm's distance away. After kicking it ahead, we would have this player cut behind the defender. And then what that does is the defender on the ball might just kind of, it's a weird thing when someone's cutting behind you and you might just, turn your head for a second. You might just feel a little bit uncomfortable. And that might create an opportunity for the player of the ball to just drive hard, kind of off their teammates' heels. If we've had our X cut and there's no opportunity to drive, then again, we would have our 5 running into a side pick and roll or a drag screen. So pulling it all together, how does that work? For us, we had the rule that the closest player would inbound the ball. So, most teams will have, maybe it's the 4, might be the 3, might be the 5, depending on your system. You'll say, okay, when the other team scores, you're taking the ball out of bounds. For us, we would say closest player inbound. So as soon as the other team scores, if you're there, you just take it out of the net. You try to get what we call a 1 foot inbound. So you just try to get 1 foot out of bounds, turn, if there's a safe pass on, just trying to get it in as quick as possible. Now, obviously, we can adjust that as the game goes on. So for us, and I won't go super detailed into this, but for us, if we knew the other team was maybe in a zone press, in our huddle, we would say, okay, it has to be a guard inbound. And we need, 2 certain players to set up in our guard formation so we're ready for the zone press break. Maybe the other team's just in man-to-man pressure. Then we might, again, try to have a certain player inbound the ball. Or what we might also do is have our 5 coming back towards the inbound pass. Now, let's say we have a guard take it out of bounds and they throw it to one of our bigs. If it's not a strength for the big, we don't want them to catch the ball and turn and try and advance themselves. So they'll catch the ball. The inbounder will get themselves in bounds. They'll throw it back to them. So we call that gets, where you throw it and you get the ball back. Our 5, who is kind of the last piece of the puzzle. So rules for the 5 are, if they're ahead of the basketball, we want them to be coming back towards the ball and setting punch screens up towards or a little bit past halfway. If they are trailing the play, then we want them to be running into drag screens, right? And for us in this particular under 20 women's team, we didn't have any players that really fit this criteria. But if you have a legitimate big who's good at rim running, then the third option for them is they could go rim run as well. So here's some examples of us, pulling it all together. So we have the other team scored. Okay, closest person to the ball happens to be our point guard. Okay, turns around, quick inbound. Now, so number 14 here was our big on the court. So again, we don't want the big to be catching the ball and advancing themselves. So they just turn and we just play gets with the inbounder. And then we're looking to advance. Now, as you can see, we're getting out really wide. We have all the players looking over their inside shoulder, looking for kick ahead passes. We have the player of the basketball just gunning it down the court, heads on the rim. Okay, pretty good spacing. Guards explored a little bit. We end up kind of having, that's almost a blend between a kick ahead, an X cut, and a zoom. And then we have our 5, like I said, if they're behind the play, they're running into a drag screen. Now, this here, so actually I'll go back to the start. This is where it all starts to come together. Now, I won't really discuss in detail our half-court offense and how it all fused together, but something I know Mark Radford down here in Tassie talks a lot about is, what's next to your offense. So for us, we had, particular stuff we try to get to in the half court that, all right, when we don't have something in transition, well, what's next? And we don't want to have gaps in our game. So this is a good example of pace in transition in the full court and then pace in the half court. Drag screen, okay, playing off 2 count, get the ball moving. right? So the ball never really gets stuck in anyone's hands. We end up getting pretty, easy 2 points. Okay, for our next clip. So again, we have players getting out really wide, looking over their inside shoulder for a kick-out pass. We're gunning. Okay, there's no opportunity for a kick-out pass. Another thing we did allow was for the ball handler, if they wanted to just get the ball to the wing themselves, the player in the corner could just stay in the corner, and then they could come off the drag screen. Something we had, and again, it's pick and roll play, and I won't, it's not really the topic, so I won't go into too much detail, but we did always say to our guards that if you wanted to, you could play gets with the screener. So again, gets is when you're throwing the ball and you go get it back. You might do that if you're being really pressured. You might do that if you just want to throw it and then come off at a little bit of pace. So that's an example of, I guess, a drag screen gets. This is an example of when our 5 gets ahead of the ball. So they're coming back and they're looking to set smash screens. Player, if the ball comes off it, heads on the rim, looking to explore. Obviously, this particular possession didn't feel like there was an opportunity to really make something happen. So we get the ball to the wing, we have an X-cut, and then we get into our half-court stuff. So I guess how can you practice this? I'll show you this drill here. This is 4 and 3 plus 1, and again, this is not overly innovative. I'm sure most of you have done some variation of this drill. What I like to do with it is actually put an offensive player at the top of the 3-point line, and that just gives the offense an even more exaggerated advantage. And then, really simple rules. If the ball gets thrown to your player on the baseline, you got to go touch the baseline. Again, nothing spectacular. This player here, if you're a guard, like we said, as soon as we get the ball, we want to sprint like Usain Bolt, and we want to get to the sideline as quick as we can. Right? Everyone else is getting out nice and wide. We had a head on the rim. Right? Now, this particular possession, I would have maybe liked to have seen the player with the basketball now kind of attack and try to get a piece of paint. But I don't mind it because they obviously recognize a 2-on-1 on the weak side. Right? So let's imagine they got just maybe one extra dribble, a piece of paint, and kicked it out. We then have an extra pass, get a wide open shot for one of our better shooters. So that's a pretty good shot for us. Same thing here. Now, maybe this particular possession would have liked to see this player maybe just get a little bit wider. So maybe over towards the green line a little bit. Whoops, sorry. Again, could have got a little bit wider, but otherwise we have the player with the basketball, attacking, heads on the rim, right? Always looking, can I score first? In this particular instance, they've noticed the defender's sunk in. We've had a piece of the paint. We have a kick out 3. Again, one of our better shooters. That's a pretty good shot for us within our framework. How can you advance the drill? You might have, all right, when it's thrown to the player on the baseline, the defense doesn't have to touch the baseline. So you're not giving as exaggerated of an advantage. You might then, if that's the case, have this player here getting ahead of the ball and coming back and setting punch screens to try and create some sort of advantage. You could also, if that, let's say that is, a good legitimate 5, you could have them rim run as well. So that's one way you could advance it. We ended up keeping it the same here for this. Then we've got a kick out pass. We have 2 feet in the paint, kick out. Again, if I'm being really critical, I would have liked to have seen this player kick it out and turn and sprint opposite. But otherwise, pretty good pace, ball's moving. Right, we end up keeping relatively good spacing. We get a second penetration, wide open 3. Pretty good. And then another way of advancing it is so you can play 2 ways. So where you've gone down one way, score or stop, the other team gets the ball and they bring it back. So on a score, this is when we try to bring it all together, and we would have 1 foot inbound. We got our teammates getting out nice and wide, right? Then we're bringing forward all those teaching points. So that's one way you can practice it. Something else I really like to do and really encourage is random starts. So again, nothing overly innovative, and I'm sure most of you have done this before, where you have, coach with the basketball, you have, everyone run the circle, you call out a player's name, or you call out, color, and it's that team's ball, and they're going the other way. With that, you might, have them closest player to the ball. If you were doing closest inbounds, would just take the ball out of bounds and look to go. Another way you could do some random starts. So you might have 2 players from each team inside the keyway. You might have 3 players from each team outside the 3-point line, and you just chuck it up, and whoever gets the ball, it's their possession going the other way. So you could do that. Maybe you have all the players buddy up with someone from the other team, and they're just kind of moving around inside the 3-point line, and you might just randomly yell something out. So you might say, white ball from here. You might say, white ball from the baseline. You might say white ball sideline out of bounds. Like anything you can think of that just makes it random for the teams. And I think the reason I like to do this is when we kind of premeditate and we set it up and we make it perfect for the players at practice, then they get to games and it just takes a little bit to get that shape of their offense. But by making it random starts and doing stuff like that, what it does is it forces the players to figure out, our framework, whatever that might be for our offense, quickly, and it forces them to be adaptable and find a way to get into our shape. So that's another way you can practice it. And then obviously the last way is just play, like scrimmage at your training sessions. So yeah, thank you again for everyone for jumping on tonight. I know that's a lot of information, and I only really kind of skimmed over the top of it there. I do have that clinic where there was some possessions of. I've actually got a full clinic on a lot of what I've presented on tonight up on my YouTube channel. Plus, I've got a bunch of other, drills of just various basketball things on my YouTube channel. So it's there. It's MMART Basketball. So don't hesitate to check that out. Otherwise, I know we'll have a Q&A here in a second, but feel free to contact me if you have any questions or if you need anything. That's my email address for my work with Basketball Tasmania. It'd be really cool to hear from some of the coaches that were on tonight, and I'm always happy to talk hoops.
First of all, thanks Nick for presenting on that. Some of that we're pretty confident with what we do. At Casey, we spent a bit of time talking about playing through the first 8 with some pace, but we've got some questions here. The first one is, would you still play with pace as a focus if you had a bigger team? I know in Townsville, obviously with the 18s, you had Lauren who was 6'4", and yep. Would that still be a focus? And I think the pace in the half court is very different to the pace in the full court.
Correct.
So,
yeah, I think really good question, and let's say, and I haven't committed to it yet, but let's say I coach the under-20 women next year at next year's under-20 nationals. Yeah, like you mentioned, there will be some size coming into that team, and we would probably make a few adjustments to some stuff. I think the key concepts and the key principles would still be there, and we would just, it's almost. And I remember back to when I was assistant coach with the Cairns Marlins in the what's now the NBL 1 North. I remember we had Matt Smith, who this was towards the end of his playing days, but he would always come off the bench, and he was the only legitimate size in the team. And it was almost like we played it at 2 paces. When he wasn't on the court, we wanted to get out and run a little bit. When he was, we just made a few adjustments to some stuff. So I guess in a long way to answer the question, we'd make some adjustments. We would definitely emphasize playing with pace a little bit more, but we would still definitely try and keep a lot of those key concepts.
Yeah, I think with whenever you have someone with some size, we'll probably be hearing a few more black calls from the sideline to make sure that the bigs get some love. At practice, how do you go? Perhaps individually coaching the players around being composed while playing with pace. Generally, you'll see some players that are just become quite erratic. And talk us through, how you might address a conversation with an individual as opposed to the team.
Yeah, so I think, and that was the stuff I kind of showed was maybe, towards the back end of the build up, we would do, and again on that, there's a clinic that I put up on that YouTube channel. You kind of see how we would start it off like in a one-on-one setting, and then how we would go to a two-on-one setting. So there is a little bit of a build up to how we get to what I presented on tonight. But I guess, at the end of the day, it comes down to those two things I spoke about at the start. So it's about making, good decisions, and it's about good skill execution. So for our practice, for particular athletes turning the ball over a lot, then you've got to be asking yourself, and you've got to be asking them, all right, well, why did you make that error? And having, coaching on the run a lot, and trying to get them to understand, and maybe they can identify, all right, I'm just making poor decisions, and maybe I need to catch the ball, and like it's playing off a 2 count. So it's 1 and 2 and do something. It's not 1 and 2. Maybe try to get them to understand that they don't have to rush.
Sure. This one's kind of 2 questions in one. Talk a little bit about the differences between sort of a development phase and then a performance phase, such as nationals is, sort of you're at the pointy end of it and it's time to play, and players sort of are what they are for that campaign, as opposed to programs leading up to 12s, 14s, 16s, 18s. For example, being your press breaker, closest man gets it out, you throw it to your 5, you go get straight away, which isn't uncommon at a senior level. With that in mind, how do you then communicate to those players like, dude, you can't dribble the ball, like you need to give it back to your players straight away? So how do you strike that balance between performance and development?
Yeah, and I think, like you said, it when you're coaching a team as such, and for us with what we do here in Tassie, when we're in our development programs, then there might be a little bit more lenience with athletes to try and obviously, upskill themselves, and then over the course of it, maybe they start off as a player who can't handle the ball, and maybe towards the end of it they can. So it's understanding, like you said, understanding that time and place for it. When we're starting to get to state teams, we start the conversations really early in the campaign with the athletes about what your role is, and a big part of that is you got to have regular check-in conversations with the athletes. You got to have regular flight path conversations. You got to make it really clear to them what their role is, and get them to understand a big part of your role is, well, what are your strengths? What are you good at? And it's not so much, with, let's say, we're not necessarily saying we don't want you to dribble the ball because you're going to turn it over. But what we're saying is, at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is not, I guess, hold you back, but we're trying to protect you. So when you get to nationals, well, you're actually not going to be able to get that done, right? So it's not so much, holding the players back, but trying to get them to understand we're actually protecting you by putting these, I guess, restrictions in place.
Sure. How do you strike the balance between committing to the defensive possession and the players getting out to run, like leaking out?
Yeah, it wasn't. I'll be 100% honest. So with all this stuff we did, and I look back at, we definitely had a big time offensive focus. And again, to give context, this particular group, really high basketball IQ, and they were a team that traditionally, coming through nationals, at times struggled to score. So we definitely put a big, offensive focus in with them. I look back at it and I look at some games now, and we definitely could have been a lot better defensively. So as far as how to strike that balance, it's up to you as a coach, what you want to be good at, what you want to emphasize. Like, I know we all want to try and have our teams be perfect at everything, but it really comes down to you and your philosophy about what you want your team to be good at. And for us in that particular group, we wanted to be better offensively. So that was a big part of our philosophy.
Sure. Just got a couple more before we wrap up. The first one is, what methods or programs do you have at training or team for individuals to bring pace into the game for all athletes? We've seen some people scrimmage with a short shot clock, example, those types of things.
Yeah, so Dominoes Drill, like I said, that's in the half court, and that's really trying to emphasize playing, off a 2 count and making quick decisions in the half court. I didn't explain when I was going through it, but there's different ways you could do that, or any scrimmage, let's say. You could have it where, obviously you might alternate every possession, who's on offense, who's on defense. You might have, if you make it, you take it. Another way we've done it is each team gets 3 minutes, and that's all they have on offense. So you get like a 3-minute block on offense, and then you try to get as many points as you can, and then it flips over. And then the other team has 3 minutes to try and beat your score. And that's a way of, they're going to try and, get the right shots, but they're going to try to play really fast because of that. Like you said, and that's maybe something we do with the random starts is we might put a certain shot clock on. So it might be a 10, 12 second shot clock. So there's still a little bit of time to maybe get to something on the second side, but that's definitely something we've done as well.